Yes, okay. Hi everyone, my name is Pasant and I'm presenting today on behalf of my co-authors from so many universities because we did this project in one of the winter schools in West Conference. And this project is also done as a part of an EU project called Amplify about augmenting human capabilities. So, implicit communication has always been looked at and people always wanted it since movies like What Women Want, because then you can understand a lot about what a person is thinking. This was always wanted because once you figure out what a person thinks about, you can optimize your actions, you can show empathy, which is very socially rewarding, and it also gives space for people who are introverts to express themselves safely. Unluckily, currently, we still cannot read minds, but we can design systems that communicate a bit about our cognitive states, and people have the capability to make inferences once we communicate such cognitive states. In this work, we focus on trying to figure out how to design such systems efficiently. And in order to do that, we do an exploratory elicitation study to figure out what are the design parameters for this implicit cognitive state communication. To be able to do that, we decided to design a research probe that controls media and communicates a pseudo-cognitive state that we named brain occupancy. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to present to you the concept, how we implemented it technically. However, our focus is not on the technical implementation. It's just a proof of concept that this is doable, and the elicitation study that we did through an online survey. So before we proceed, let me tell you what we mean by brain occupancy. It's basically how busy your mind is. It has a neutral connotation. It's not positive or negative. It's just whether you're thinking about things or not. So to give you a bit of a hint about what's the related work existing, because there's lots of that, there was already a lot of work done on using alpha waves to indicate like calm states in meditation and behavioral change. And there's also some very interesting work on communicating depictions of our physiological state in an artistic way to increase empathy and communication between people. So for example, there's Ayona. I'm not sure if the pronunciation is correct. So basically, she's an artist who depicted her transient feelings and thoughts into vibrant vibrations of water pools to represent her brain state. There's also another very interesting exhibition. I really invite you to look at it. It's called EEG Kiss, which basically visualizes the intimacy between two people while kissing through depicting their brain waves in some sort of portrait. So now for our concept, our concept has two shares basically. The first one could hear the thoughts of the second one, and the second one could see the thoughts of the first one. So the one that could hear, we depict it using music that gets faster the more the brain occupancy is higher, and lower or like slower the more the brain occupancy is calmer. And it's important to note that the music is not uncomfortable in any of the states, whether it's slow or fast, because again, we want to focus on the neutral connotation. And the other way around, the person who could actually see could see like balls that are hitting each other, and they're faster, the higher the brain occupancy. And each of them is deprived of the other sense so that they completely focus on the state of the partner, not themselves. And other people are allowed to watch this cave experience while they can hear and while they can listen to the music. So in our study, we used an online survey where we did a video of this concept after we built it and explained what is brain occupancy and what do we mean by it. And our objective was to figure out the design requirements. Mainly, we wanted to figure out how could we actually depict such brain occupancy and what are the sharing patterns. We had 43 participants, 1 non-binary, 17 females and 25 males. The average age was 27 years old. We had already 34% of our participants who tried BCIs before, and we had 23% experts in the sample. So the first point I want to talk about is the sharing patterns. Like we expected, people are more willing to share with romantic partners and family members, but the surprising thing was that they considered colleagues just like strangers. Actually, in the qualitative feedback later, we found out that they prefer sharing with strangers over colleagues. Now I will tell you about a bit of the use cases that they wanted to share because this was interesting for us. So with the romantic partners, they wanted to share because they thought this is a sign of a romantic gesture, that they actually trust the person. And they found that the system could be used to augment their sexual life. So for example, one of the participants said that I do BDSM and I find this system an interesting way of sharing a new experience and figuring out more about my partner. They also wanted to use it as a conversation starter in case they feel that the partner is very stressed out and they don't know what's happening. However, they had concerns that in case of misinterpretations in the system, this would cause a lot of problems because it signifies that the relationship is shallow and the partner cannot understand on their own. With the family, they also wanted to share as a gesture of trust and openness, but they mainly wanted to share it whenever there's a conflict. So for example, they wanted the system to tell them whether a person is thinking a lot about a particular topic or not. And also, we got a lot of suggestions about using it with kids and with paralyzed members. With colleagues, people like the participants also said that they want to share it as a communication mediator. However, they really didn't prefer it because they perceive the system as if it's sharing feelings rather than a cognitive state. And they said that they don't care about the feelings of a colleague. What matters is what they say out loud. Otherwise, we shouldn't interfere with their internal states. And with the strangers, people were actually very interested to have such an experience with a stranger because they thought it's going to have a much higher authenticity. Since you don't know the person, they will go away and you're free to share with them. And they thought it would be more interesting as a scientific experiment to figure out how BCIs are working and so on. And they were also very interested to do it in a public exhibition, which was surprising for us. While on the other side, they had reasons not to share. Aligning with the prior work, of course, people were afraid of the privacy and the lack of trust. The fear of rejection and judgment, particularly with bosses, because they were afraid that such systems could be used to manipulate persons and to bully them. And because they also had considerations for others, they didn't want to overload them. But the new reasons that we found that people thought our system would actually expose them in case of they're doing like fake social cueing. So let's say you're bored in a party and then you get into such a system and people would know that, you're actually very calm and annoying. And also in high cognitive states like exams and so on, because this would be very distracting. Regarding the sharing depictions, I invite you to look at it in the paper. So these are like some very solid suggestions against the senses. But what we found interesting is that most of the suggestions came for the somatosensation, which is basically haptic feedback. And people were very creative about how, what would be the illustration and how to depict the changes. While they didn't really like the olfaction and the gustation, which is basically what you feel when you eat and what you smell, although we thought they're gonna like it because of being novel. And also with the gustation, they had negative connotation with the brain occupancy, which didn't happen with the other senses. And they also suggested personalization for them. So now I want to tell you about some of the lessons learned from this. Basically, we found that people share to prove closeness and to mediate communication. However, we got lots of comments about not wanting any concrete interpretations. By concrete interpretations, something like, this person has a very busy mind now, or no, they're just super calm, because they thought this is going to cause a lot of discord and like conflicts in case the system is misinterpreting the state. And also, they were very deliberate about not sharing with superiors because they thought this is going to cause a lot of manipulation. Similarly, people preferred serial representations over solid representations because it provides room for interpretation in case they want to hide something about their state. And what we also found interesting is that they didn't consider that they are sharing their state with the observers, although technically speaking, they could see both of them. And we consolidated what we learned in some design blocks to help future designers think about such systems. So first of all, a designer should think about the stakeholders in terms of the sharers. Could they perceive their own state or not? And in terms of the observers, can they see both sharers or one of the sharers? And could they actually impact the experience and interfere in it or not? In terms of the location, there are complete design, different design implications, whether you use such system in private setups or in public setups like exhibitions. And in terms of abstraction, whether you want to show the brain activity or the corresponding action. So let's say, for example, whether you want to say that Thomas now is busy or you shouldn't talk to Thomas now at all. So this is like the different levels of abstraction. And in terms of depiction, whether you want to use single or multiple senses, which senses would you use, what would be your base illustration, which is basically in our case the music, and how would you depict the changes, which is basically being faster or calmer. And we think such systems could be used to support empathy between people, because then you can understand a lot about your state, and to elicit trust and openness, because once you actually agree to share with someone, it makes them feel that they are special. And more interestingly for us, that we'd like to test in the future, is to reach cognitive convergence. So let's say you go to a meditation guru and you're always having like a very busy mind. And now, because you can see that they're super calm because of the music, can you actually get calmer, and could your guru figure out what's happening in your mind faster or not? Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. So other questions about Passant's work? Because if not, I have one.
Okay.
And it's, so actually I have two questions, but I will ask one first. So